Good morning, Keith Hayes, up in the radio studio, fresh from about on television, ranting and raving and getting ourselves ready for the weekend when we can say goodbye to the council until Monday. After all the other problems that the world is about to throw up, can we? Heck, it's going to be a pretty riotous Friday because all sorts of things have happened, haven't they? Brexit, of course, comes back into the news, and so do the banks, and so do the railways, and so do all the other things which at the moment are proving very difficult for our lives. All right, well, let's get into the heart of the matter. Keith Hayes, broadcasting from Lewes in East Sussex, primarily to people from Battle from Brighton, Battle up to Tunbridge Wells, and Lewes up to Gatwick. Pretty large area in landmass, and actually if you add our neighbours in West Sussex to us, I believe that Sussex as a whole is the largest of the counties anywhere in the United Kingdom, and of course one of the oldest and most ancient. So that's where we're broadcasting from, not Lewes in Delaware, although we embrace the people in Delaware, and if anybody happens to be listening, and I know that we have got an American audience, let's hope that they will be joining us and be kindred spirits in fighting bureaucracy, because the Americans sure got problems as well as we have, and they seem to be fairly common problems, if you know what I mean. And so anyway, people from Lewes in Delaware, you're very, very welcome. What is it about? Let's see, it'll be 1 o'clock in the morning there. So I guess the late night carousers. But until the summer season starts, Lewes, Delaware is a very quiet little place. But it wasn't always. They got involved in the War of 1812, and a British captain sailed up and demanded that the local grocery store give him a couple of bottles of sauce for his men, and they said no, and he fired a cannon, and that cannonball is still lodged in one of the hotel stairways, and which is called, I think, the Cannonball Hotel, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, that's Lewes, Delaware. This is Lewes in the UK, in East Sussex, on the south coast. And this is Rouser Radio, serving the population of Lewes, both Leweses, but www, and that means that anybody in the world can tap in, and I hope that they will, because we would love to see them. We'd be very happy to see them, in fact. So there we are, talking local issues, but putting them into an international context where that so demands. What are we going to talk about this morning? Well, let's take just a look back over the week. First of all, the issue of food banks, where the Department for Work and Pensions suddenly said, without too much of a big announcement, that they wouldn't issue a chitty to say somebody was registered with them and could use the food bank. They said that was bad publicity doing that. They didn't want to get themselves a bad reputation. How on earth anybody argued themselves into that position, I have no idea, but they did. And so they stopped issuing these little pieces of paper, these little tokens, so that people could go to the food banks. They don't need them anyway, they said. Food banks don't really ask for them. Up rose a number of people who run food banks, who really have to watch out for their precious commodities and make sure they go to the right people. And they said, yes, we do. If you say that they don't. Maria Caulfield got into the act, and she said one thing and then another, and it turned out that she'd been badly briefed, probably briefed by the government, and that's the unfortunate thing, of course. If your MP is briefed by the government, it puts out whatever the government says. That's unfortunate. But anyway, it was a whole ram-to-dam-dam, and nothing has changed as far as I'm aware over the week, and if it has, we'll certainly let you know on Monday morning. But that was a big issue during the week, and it was not so much an issue to me of whether people could gain access to the food banks. There are plenty of people that are working, activists who work hard to support people for that. What really bothered me was, once again, is a case of the government making excuses, to all intents and purposes lying. And if only they would realise that they get caught out very quickly, and that probably MPs, and there have been surveys which have supported this view, MPs right now are at an all-time low. Never in modern history anyway have members of Parliament been looked at with such disdain, disbelief and lack of trust. And do they try to get their act together? No, they don't. They're arrogant enough to play their silly games in Parliament. Now, don't misunderstand me. Debate in Parliament, I think, is fundamental to our democracy. We need to find out every last vestige of what's going on, and the government must be able to justify what it does to all its critics, and doing it through debate in the House of Commons is as good a way as any. In fact, it's a better way than most. But after that, porcupines come rushing out like crazy, and most of them from what I call the executive, the civil servants. They are running politicians nowadays, and not vice versa, and that's certainly true of Lewis. We want to really get our act together. If you've had your copy of Town and County through the door over this last 2 or 3 days, you'll see an article in there that talks about trying to get through on the phone. Press 1, press 2, press 3. Well, 6 to 8 months ago, no, a year ago, that's what it was like. The excuse was made, well, it'll take a little time to settle down with the merger between Eastbourne and Lewis. Has it settled down? No, it hasn't. It was such a common complaint that the Politicians' Scrutiny Committee, as it's called, called a meeting, or had a meeting, to take a look at what the council was doing. And although it's not made public, I don't think, as to what went on, the whistleblowers have managed to let us know that a gentleman who is in charge, or supposedly in charge, of the phone system for the council was hauled before the politicians and asked what was going on. And he said, "Don't worry, chaps, just temporary blip, we'll soon have it fixed." Well, it's not. Yesterday, someone I know tried to get through to talk about a planning application. Gave up after half an hour of press 1, press 2, press 3, not getting through and talking to anybody. And the whole thing is in chaos, and so is their computer system. I have my own fight, which is going to be round by round over the coming weeks. As things transpire, I will be brought out in this programme. But for the moment, what we know is that the Scrutiny Committee, it can scrutinise all it wants, but nothing changes. Nothing changes. So the computer system is still up the chute, the phone system even worse, and the support from Customer First is almost non-existent. It's just rubbish. And if they're not fit for purpose, why don't you resign, get out of the business, go and find something that you can do, play golf or whatever. But charging us the huge amounts of money for your salaries is just beyond the pale. Anyway, my mouth is getting a bit dry from ranting and raving. Let's finish the week where we started it with. Oh no, we didn't. We ended last week with Dandelion Charm. They're our favourites because they're out of New Haven. And they had a superb concert last Friday, thanks to some of you listeners who both turned up but also gave them huge encouragement on the internet. This is one of their new releases that they sent to me, and it's called September.
Take good care of all you see and do. Keep your sunshine, hold it close to you. And always will remember the light shining from you. And I hope your September is not blue. It's not blue. It's not blue. Moments only till this chapter's through. Time gets lost, but time is always new. And always will remember the light shining from you. And I hope your September is not blue. It's not blue. It's not blue. It's not blue. It's not blue. Look ahead, do not fret. There's nothing that you cannot do. Look ahead, do not fret, 'cause everything's waiting for you. Oh, everything's waiting for you. And always will remember the light shining from you. And I hope your September, really hope your September is not
A delightful sound there from Claire and John, Dandelion Charm, out of New Haven. And New Haven is never ever very far from the news. It's a funny mixed town. It has had so much innovation, and yet for some reason, and the residents down there are quite right, is local government always picks on them, dumps on them. Every time that things are done to improve the town, along comes some government initiative, local government initiative, which they want to build a cement factory or something of the sort on the banks of the harbour.